So if you didn't import jQuery into your HTML document, putting these functions in your HTML document wouldn't make any sense at all. Because this sort of syntax is not JavaScript at all. It's specific to jQuery. So I didn't get a chance to show you this, but in order to do this similar kind of thing where you select elements like this in pure JavaScript, or what we call vanilla JavaScript, it tends to be a lot more coding. So JavaScript or jQuery just helps you simplify things, and it also has a lot of different functions like animation so that you don't have to write those things yourself and make it browser specific. So after you've added your script tags and all that stuff, what you want to do in order to get jQuery started is to put this code right here. And you would put this code within a script tag within either the body or the head like we talked about earlier. And what this does here is it says this code allows you to basically wait until all the HTML is loaded, all the CSS has loaded, and the browser has rendered all those things before doing some JavaScript commands or functions on that. So the reason why we do that is because we don't want the document to sort of half load the HTML or half load the CSS before we act upon it, right? Because when we write the JavaScript code, we're kind of assuming that all that stuff is already there. So this function right here, this set of code allows you to make sure that the document is fully ready for you to manipulate before you continue. So just to break it down a little, right here what we have is a selector for the document, or like the HTML document itself, and we call a function .ready. That's a jQuery function that just checks if the document or this specific element has been fully rendered yet. So yeah, and right here is where you be putting your JavaScript or jQuery code. Yeah.
So what does it do if the document is not ready?
So in some instances, it could cause errors if the certain things do not exist yet while it's loading partially. Okay. Does that make sense?
So it only asks it only does all the code if the document is ready, but then if it's not ready, it might give errors.
Huh?
Is what you're saying. Like if it's not completely
Right,
ready.
right, yeah. If the document is not ready and you executed JavaScript on it, and it just happens that you executed JavaScript on something that hasn't been rendered yet, then you would run into errors.
Okay. I guess I just don't see the point of that particular function, because, I mean, if it's not rendered, wouldn't it give an error despite not having that function there?
Right. Yeah. Maybe I'm confused about your question. So, like, it would give an error if, like, this.
I guess, like, if it's not there, and whatever the JavaScript is supposed to act on is not rendered yet, doesn't it give an error regardless, whether or not .ready is there or not? I guess it's a very minute.
What's the question?
I guess it's a very minute detail that like I don't.
No, it's okay. Wait, I don't
understand
your question.
Yeah, I'm confused. Sorry.
Well, I'm just confused because you're saying that .ready is there to check if the whole document is rendered or not.
Oh, it executes what's inside when it is ready.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if it's not ready, it just waits.
It just waits. And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
Okay, that's all I was
Okay.
wondering.
Right.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
this jQuery command basically waits is an event, what we call an event listener. I'll talk about that in several slides. But it just sits around sort of in some queue, waiting for things to happen or certain events to get triggered before the code within it is executed.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
So document is just a special selector that doesn't need quotes?
Document refers to, yeah, it's just doesn't need quotes, and that refers to the entire HTML document. Oh, actually, one thing I need to I don't know if any of you guys caught it, but right here I use single quotes, and over here I use double quotes, and it doesn't matter at all. So you can use either when trying to select a particular element in HTML. Okay. Okay, right, so we've talked about this kind of already, about how HTML gets selected. We start with that dollar sign, and in parentheses and in quotes, you put the CSS selected. Okay, so we're going to go over a couple of functions. And one of the functions is a function called .adder. And what .adder does is it allows you to change an attribute, an HTML attribute, of the element selected. So in this case, you can imagine that we have an image element in the HTML, and that image has an ID, my image. And right here, what we've done is we've changed the attribute source into some other image. It's called someimage.jpg. And what that'll do is when that runs, it'll change the image itself. Like in this example here, right here we have Simba, and then we have a button where we try to watch Simba become a man. And when I click that, so the browser window itself did not reload. Wait, no, it didn't. Yeah. So it just imported another. It just swapped out that source code to add a different image to the to that image tag. Okay, and then another thing is changing CSS. So, changing classes. And this is pretty self-explanatory. There's two main commands, .add class and .remove class. And all that does is it takes, for example, some div that has class header. When this code is executed, it would basically add the class header to that div. And in this case, remove class will remove the class name header from that div. Is that clear? So in the example, here I have an add remove class, and this is just a div that's empty and it has a border. So when I click this button, what it does is it adds a class to this div, and all that class does is it says to make the background color blue. Oh, and another thing is you can download this demo on our lecture slides if you go to the website. So you just click this, and it just changes the background, or adds a class to that div to make it change to blue. Okay. One other thing here is sort of ignore this line. We can also change CSS properties by doing something called .css right here. And what .css does is it allows you to put multiple CSS attributes to change for that particular jQuery selection. Okay. So here we've done two different rules for this element here. So we changed the color to red, and we changed the font size to 200 pixels. So you can imagine actually appending a ton of other CSS rules by just adding commas and then putting those CSS rules and just yeah. So just add a comma and then add the other rules and then a comma and so on and so forth. Yeah.
So can you go back a step? What's the syntax? What's like .click reference?
Oh, so.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. It's an event. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, this image is kind of bad, but we'll get into it a little more, and there's several slides now. So we talked about event handling, and what event handling is just a way for JavaScript to know when certain actions have happened. So for example, you click on a button, that creates an event, right? More specifically, it's created a .click event and on that button. And in another example, if you move your mouse, right? By moving your mouse, what you're doing to telling the browser is you're telling it that you changed your mouse position or your cursor position. and that's also an event. So there's like a ton of different events. You can look it up on this link right here. Another cool event is detecting a hover. So for example, you created some div. What you could do is add a .mouseover event so that whenever the cursor goes over that div, you know exactly when that happened, and you can do some special function for that particular event. So one other thing that we need to talk about for your lab is just variables. They're very simple. This is sort of where the programming comes in, but they're very simple to think about. So if we ignore these two, like just lines, if we just look at lines 2 and 3, what we can see here is we declare something called a var, which in JavaScript stands for variable. And we created a variable named img, or image, right? And what we do is we set that variable equal to the jQuery selection of this specific element with this ID. And by doing that, what we can do is we can take this image and basically add some other jQuery functions to it. So in this case, it was the .css where we changed a bunch of CSS for that particular element. And then later on, you can imagine sort of like in the next line doing img.addClass, img.removeClass, and so on and so forth. So basically, it's in this case, the img has been used to substitute, has been used as a sort of like a substitute or alias to this jQuery selector. Okay, the next thing I need to talk about is JavaScript functions. And so JavaScript functions are kind of, they're really interesting. So the reason why is because there's several ways to construct JavaScript functions. And I think for the lab, what you have to do is declare something called function, and the name of the function here, and along with variables if you need to. That might get clear in the lab as you work on it, so yeah, let's just move on. So one more thing that you can do with jQuery is, remember we had these, remember here you're able to add a special jQuery function to this selector? What you can do with jQuery is actually append these things. So instead of doing separate actions here, like selecting that same div and doing .adder, and selecting the same div and changing the CSS, you can just select the div once, and then do a .adder, and then just append the .css. So that sort of cleans up the code, makes things look a little bit better. Okay, so now we have the lab. I'm going to upload it in a couple of minutes, but it's just basically several tasks that you have to do using jQuery, and you need to be able to look up online some of the jQuery commands to figure out the syntax for that. But for now, I think a lot of you guys were concerned about working on the mini project. So if you are concerned about working on the mini project, I suggest you do that today, since the lab won't be due till next week. So just work on the mini project today if you're concerned about that, and then you can work on the lab afterwards. Okay?
How many people have started on the mini project? Just wondering.
How many people have finished?
Anyone finished? Oh, nice. Does anyone need office hours this week? Or would grade like it? Okay. Probably I'm not the same office hours. Okay, we'll post on the website or send an email about like the time for office hours.
Next place, you have your seat.
Oh, sorry.
You serve the
Yeah, we'll finish. Oh, yeah. So we'll figure out that. If not, we'll post it on there.
Have a time to talk.
A lot of people don't know, so.
That's fine.
We'll probably post on this with like the
Like that was a question I was
How's it going?
close receipts too. I can
Yeah. And then I think so. Like when they're changing the stuff, check out.
Oh, you lacking kisses from sweet someone.
Is that how you smoke?
Oh. She said she's like, are you lacking kisses for drinking someone?
Actually, when I was trying to finish the lab 6, because it kind of built upon the extra for experts on lab 4, and I was absent the day of lab 4, so I never did that. So I wasn't able to do this part. If I were to go through and actually do lab 4 now in order to do this, would I still be able to get credit for it, or how does that work? Or should I? I tried doing it. I should. Okay.
I mean, we might do something. I think there are people who really can do lab 4.
Okay.
You'll need to do lab 4 here.
Great.